All right, well, thanks for being here. I just wanted to talk to you today about Japanese business communications and their etiquette. To start off, according to worldbusinessculture.com, USA accounts for 16% of Japanese imports and 11% of Japanese exports, which actually is the second only to China, which is a significant amount of business that you can generate from a huge global force like Japan. The reason why this is important is because if you go into a different culture with different mindset, you might actually, without speaking a single word, already have hurt your business cycle. You might have actually ruined any chance for a good business decision on their part. Now, interactions, like I said, in Japan can go over without even a word spoken. In fact, they're more nonverbal than verbal, whereas we're a little bit on the opposite side here in the Western side of the world. So I've researched a lot about the different cultures. A lot of the sources I have are from people who actually are Westerners going to Japan, so they know sort of what you might expect here and then what you might get from that side of the world. They have direct relationships with Japan and their business culture. Two of the authors, like I said, are from North America, so they know sort of the challenges that we face. And I will get into how crucial it can be. So the agenda is there's two distinct modes of communication. There's hierarchy and form, there's nonverbal communication, and then there's a certain letter writing etiquette. Okay, so modes of communication, there's two types of voices they call them. So there's the tatame and there's the hane. The tatame is the formal voice. When you're in a business communication setting, you actually would save face. You don't want any kind of issues in the meeting. You want to keep harmony. So you might just agree with them even if you don't agree with them. Just it's a public setting. You don't want to have any problems. Now, the true voice, the hane, is actually the opposite of that. It's when you're outside of the room and you're with only the people from your company. You'll say, well, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. It's a way of preserving efficiency in your own company. So in other words, there's one that's more public and one that's more for you, it's more personal. Now, this is all from Mr. Sunyal, he's a former associate professor with the Delhi Business School, and he's now the director of the Indian Chamber of Commerce. So he has a great deal of experience overseas like that. Now the difference between these two really comes down to a Westerner going over and being too direct, and that would upset the harmony of the room, and that would actually effectively kill a business decision if that is the case. Now there is very vertical structure, similar to North America, but a little bit different, where normally promotions go very much up the chain. You don't normally jump. And the second thing is seniority is sort of based on age. So in other words, if you're making a business transaction, two companies would want to send people the same age. Even if this person down here, 20 years younger, is way more experienced, this person up here that might be 20 years older doesn't want to sit next to this person. They want to have the same age, same experience. So it might seem a little off form, but that's just how they communicate with each other, and that's sort of the respect they see, or they want to see. So hierarchy does matter there. Seating arrangements are based on seniority, so the most senior are away from the door at the front of the room, and it goes down there from seniority. And this information is from Dr. Gunling. He is the professor of Empyrean Global, which is actually a large consulting firm. He also has consulted with 3M, HP, Ford, and many of the largest companies when going in global endeavors. Now the nonverbal. Now, everything can be picked up sort of on a whim when you're in Japan. So in other words, your body language, gestures, your tone of your voice, even nonverbal cues, like sometimes they'll just make like a whisper noise, and that's sort of saying, I don't agree with this at all. And if you don't pick up on that, you might just keep going over the same points, and you already know from that one sound you just made, like a hissing sound, that they're not interested. So you really need to change course quickly if you hear those kind of tones from their voice or those kind of noises coming from them. There's a term, ichi, iba, ju, wakaru, which means hear 1, understand 10. Essentially that means 90% is nonverbal, 10% is verbal. You hear something and you can pick up the rest of the story from that one little snippet of words. So basically you're painting the story without actually speaking. This information is coming from Michelle Kopp, who's from the Japan Intercultural Consulting firm. So again, she has a lot of experience with that sort of side of it. And again, from Dr. Gunling, he had mentioned that business meetings can actually take place even if there's no agenda or no outcome that they're looking to get from it. A lot of business decisions or a lot of business meetings are made just for interpersonal reasons, for team building, for anything like that. They'll throw together a meeting just to say, well, we need to get to know these people. So there might actually be no agenda, but again, it's one of those non-spoken things. People won't actually say that, they'll just understand that that's the reason for this. Now, business writing and letters. Now, this information from Camilla King. She's from Demand Media, and again, she's done a lot of research with formal writing in different cultures and has herself been through the Japanese culture. Now, when you start, it's good to be, letters are supposed to be formal, but you can kind of throw in an informal aspect where you can mention the weather and say, the dawn of spring or fall, whichever the case, just to sort of make it informal, and it almost shows knowledge of their culture. You might not be in their country, you can say, how are you dealing with this and this and this weather-wise. It's a good way of breaking the ice, sort of. And with that, you can also inquire about the recipient's family. This is more into higher level employees. A lot of times they'll ask, how's so-and-so doing, and you can kind of break or sort of build upon that way. Business cards are a big deal in Japan. It's almost an extension of the person. You're supposed to hand it with two hands, and Japanese, it should be Japanese one side, English the other. Two hands, Japanese side facing up and towards the person. That's sort of the formal cue. And as the recipient, same thing, two hands, you accept it, and you never sort of put it in your pocket, you sort of hold on to it as you make it. It's sort of the respect you show in the business card is what they would expect, respect you show to them. Okay, so to sort of sum it up, so the knowledge and respect that you show them can go a long way, because essentially that's the trust they're getting you. So they equate that with sort of a bond of trust, which is very important in their culture. So the lack of this knowledge can actually hurt a business decision before you even spoken a word. So as we talked about the seating arrangements, if they're off, that could be shown as lack of respect, lack of knowledge, or maybe lack of trust. Sending improper employees, so in other words, somebody way younger might not be, in their eyes, the right person to send. Business card presenting and receiving, as I just mentioned, is a large factor as well. And to keep in mind the high rate of trading, imports and exports through North America and through Japan, it's emerging global economy. It's going to be only going up from here. And as the world is more connected, more and more, this is a huge factor. So I want to thank you for listening. Now, if there's any questions at all, I can sure answer them for you.
What I got out of this, Josh, was Japanese people not so much demand, but they want to reciprocate that respect, that social side of things, right?
That is right.
It's quite interesting how that.
Yeah,
Rise in the hierarchy and the age and so forth, and then want to be kind of paired off a level with the same age. And
yeah, and as I mentioned, it's sort of the trust factor. So it's
Yes.
sort of like you need to trust your trading partner, and when you sort of follow the customs that they're used to, it's sort of a comfort factor. So they can say, "Oh, I can relate to this. This is how I want it in my business." Now, again, you could say, what happens if you don't follow it? Now, if it's a great business decision, probably they're not going to say, cut it off.
Right.
However, if it's even questionable, they're going to take this into consideration. Because again, they want to be comfortable in their business decision. They don't want to go back to their manager and say, well, these were the cues that maybe I shouldn't have done this
Right.
decision. They want to say, well, maybe, he was very respectful, blah, blah, blah. So that might be another factor.
And the other person might feel that maybe I could have done something a little bit. Maybe I'm going to
Yeah.
get the deal, but
Exactly, yes.
but there could have been something, and maybe pick up on
Yeah,
what their
and
traditions are accustomed to.
yeah, absolutely. And again, at the end of the day, it could be also that you don't understand why it didn't work because of the two voices. You have the two voices informal, so you don't know really why the decision didn't work because everything seemed to have went well.
Right.
And all of a sudden you find out it wasn't accepted. So it's good to know the two different voices so you can say, well, maybe that was just the sort of the informal voice so that we can get the harmony in the room, and they didn't actually mean it. So without knowing that, you might not really know why that decision was made.
Do you think one day they'll maybe stop the meetings and just do everything online?
Yeah, I
will
think-
that hurt?
You know what? I think that is starting to happen more and more. However, there is still, I think there's a subculture that's very fast in this rule. I think there's a culture that sort of maybe, I don't want to say it so much as a, I don't want to pigeonhole it, but more of the Asian culture might be more strict into this formal world, right?
Yeah.
But as the younger generations come up who are just bred into this digital world, they might be more apt to say, well, why don't we Skype? Why don't we do this or that, right?
I think they like the older, like the interaction,
Yeah,
absolutely.
even if they don't have the agenda, it's just good being together.
Absolutely. And again, the trust factor, right?
That's right,
I think it's more
Yeah, I think
informal,
respect
more,
and trust.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
Very good.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.